Hello, everyone. Welcome. To some of you, welcome back. Happy Thursday. My name is Benjamin Ward. I'm a product manager on the Lightroom team, and I have the great pleasure of being here today with Joe Martinez, a fantastic photographer. Joe was with us yesterday. You may have gotten to see some of his work and some of his excellent tips and tricks yesterday as well. Yesterday, Joe talked with us about kind of staying creative, engaging with your creativity, getting out of creative slumps. Also showed us some of his personal projects and some incredible editing tips and techniques in Lightroom Classic. Joe, do you want to say a few words about what you'll be showing us today?
Yeah, so, the theme over these couple days is about staying motivated, as Ben kind of mentioned, and staying creative. We're going to do a little bit more of that today. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper. The thing that kind of connects both days is personal work and discovering that there's, you can be creative in a number of different ways and implement a lot of different techniques to help you stay creative. So today we're going to be diving into a personal portrait project of mine. It is called Imposter. And Imposter is an exploration into the concept of something called racial imposter syndrome. This is something that's experienced by multiracial people, mixed people, biracial people, whatever you want to call them, when they can't really fully identify with any side of their racial identity. So this is something that's really personal to me. Obviously, I'm mixed. My mom is Black, my dad is Hispanic. So definitely something that I've experienced and something that I wanted to explore a little further with portraits. I wanted to seek out other individuals who had these experiences, capture that with portraiture, talk to them about their stories and their experiences, and just try to, dig a little deeper into something that's really personal for me, and turn that into a larger personal project. So today we're going to be looking at some of those photos. We're going to be talking about the process of creating those pictures, the process of editing them, or choosing our selects. And then we're going to dive into some editing in Lightroom Classic, where we'll do kind of an overall adjustment on those. And then we'll bring everything over to Photoshop, where we'll finish off with some more in-depth retouching and some sort of skin retouching techniques that I really enjoy using.
That sounds fantastic, Joe. I had an opportunity to look at this work of yours earlier on your site, and I'm really excited to see how you produce it, but also to hear you kind of talk about how you think about this work. So really looking forward to this. Before we dive in, let me say a couple of quick little housekeeping things. We are not the only show today. We have Adobe Live events coming up throughout the day, which you can see on your screen now. So coming up after this, we'll have Creative Encore with Andrew. And you know what? I was just told how to say his name. Help me out, Joe. You heard it too.
Oh man, I heard it briefly. I don't want to do the German pronunciation, but I'll do my best. Was it? Let's see.
Hawkrattle.
Hawkrattle. Yes.
Right? Yes. Okay. I think I did better with it today than I did yesterday. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Then there'll be logo design with John Olson. We'll have some Adobe XD creative challenge, and that'll be with Andrea Epi. And draw along with Kyle T. Webster, which I totally wanted to go to yesterday and missed. So I have another chance, and I guess I can watch the recording as well. And Doodle Therapy with Alice Lee and Shirley Wu. So that'll all be coming up later on today. And one other note before we get going, if you are watching this on behance.net, there is a chat pod where you can send in your questions. I have another screen over here on my left where I'm monitoring the chat pod. So as I said yesterday, if you see me staring off like this, it's not because I've lost interest in Joe's presentation. It's because I'm looking at the chat. And I'll be able to relay your questions to Joe. If you're watching us live on YouTube, if you wish to submit questions, you can go to behance.net, click on the live streaming button up at the top, and you'll be able to submit questions that way. Joe, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So just to talk a little bit more about this project and to sort of take people through some of the sample images. This is a project that's ongoing. 2020 kind of shut everything down and it put a pause on a lot of personal projects, certainly a lot of mine. So So again, this this project explores the concept of racial imposter syndrome. It's not being able to fully be accepted or fully feel like you're accepted in by any side of your racial identity. So for multiracial or biracial people, this pops up in the real world as, oh, you're not Black enough, you're not Hispanic enough, you're not white enough, you're not insert, whatever you want enough. And this kind of causes a little bit of an identity crisis. You're not really sure where you fit in, and you start to feel like you exist in a little bit of a gray area. So I wanted to explore that gray area. I wanted to talk with people who had those experiences and really kind of talk to them about what their individual experiences were. I know what mine are. I'm sure this is a really multi-layered sort of a difficult thing to talk about and recount. And so I wanted to really talk to people and get their perspective on it. So what I did is I started reaching out. I posted something about the project on Instagram, and I got a really, really big and overwhelming response from folks who were really interested, who could really relate to the concept, who hadn't really been able to put words to it before or put a label on what they were feeling before. And these are some of the portraits that I created, showing here on my Behance page. They're really moody, they're shot on black. I wanted the subject to really be the thing that stood out in these images. I didn't want any distractions. I didn't want any environment. I just wanted these to be really simple and powerful portraits. And as you can see, some of them are shot with just regular lighting. And then we kind of bring in some gels for some other, for a kind of an alternate image of each person. And here's sort of a larger collection of those to get a kind of an overall feel of the project. So these are all people who kind of reached out to me through Instagram, through other social media channels, who were seeing the project and really relating to it, really resonated with them. All of them have, their own unique experiences. And, what I found while I was photographing everyone was that our conversations during these photo sessions were so amazing and so in-depth and just really wide-ranging. And what I started to do with my subject's permission was to record those conversations and to add another element to this, just to give voice to these photos and give voice to who these individuals are. It's easy for me to just sort of make a portrait of this person, but to then have a quote, to then have a soundbite from this person, to me was a much more powerful element, and an element that I hadn't really seen a lot of in things like this. So I began to record our conversations while we were shooting, just to hear more about these stories that they, and experiences that they had gone through being a multiracial person. And they're really fun as well. They're not all sort of like this really sad experience or this really difficult experience. It's also me and this person trading stories and being like, oh yeah, I've experienced the same thing. I've gone through the same thing. I have a hard time relating to that thing too. Really, really great discussions there. And I'm hoping for the finished product to display these somewhere, whether it's in a book or in a gallery somewhere, and include some of those sound bites, include some of those quotes from these really wonderful people who volunteered to participate in the project. So,
Joe, can I just pass along a few things?
Yeah,
from the chat here?
Please.
So first of all, just lots of praise for your work here. Beautiful portraits, love the lighting, lots of great stuff. Thank you to everybody who's chiming in here. Caroline, Reverb Mike, Ferry, there's another name I'm sure I'm not pronouncing correctly. And lots of other people too, Christy. So, and then I saw a question. I need to scroll back, scrolling. That was interesting to me. What kind of lighting setup would you suggest for someone that has a really low budget?
Great question. So, and I wanted to get into some of the lighting. If people do have lighting questions here, please feel free. So this is a pretty low budget lighting sort of layout here. What you're seeing, especially in these images where we're not using gels. So I would suggest, if you're tight on a budget, And depending on your camera manufacturer, definitely look into small flashes, look into speed lights, look into things that you can use off camera. Those are very powerful. That's how I got started with using strobes, was using really small flashes. Some of them, and they're really versatile. You can put them through an umbrella, you can bounce them off things, bounce them off, ceilings, the walls, anything like that. Those are a really, really wonderful option to me for anyone starting out, anyone that has a lower budget for lighting. Definitely start small. And really, with those, you, just like any other strobe, a larger strobe, whatever, those little smaller off-camera flashes can teach you just as much about lighting basics, about the properties of light, about just really giving you that education in the same way that a large strobe would. So I would really recommend looking at those. For someone who has a little bit of a bigger budget, I've really enjoyed using Alien Bees. Paul C. Buff is the maker of Alien Bees lighting. They're great. They can take a lot of punishment. I've brought them all over the world. I've thrown them in cases, thrown them in bags when I need to get moving. They have amazing customer service. So if I happen to break anything, I can get on the phone with them really quickly and have that repaired. And that's actually what I use for these portraits is Alien Bees. Anything that's shot without a gel, like this portrait right here of my friend Chuck, this is shot with one light through a softbox or an octabox, sort of top down, all one light. So yeah, you can get a lot out of one light. You can get a lot out of lower budget lighting. So yeah, don't be afraid to kind of explore those lower budget options. So yeah.
And I think, Joe, on your site, I saw some really nice work that you've done that, to me anyway, looked like natural light portraits as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Which is free, right?
Free, completely free. Stuff like this is shot, all available light, all natural light. I have to, a lot of times, especially when I'm shooting editorial assignments for magazines, you have to get in and out of places really quickly. And sometimes you don't always have the luxury of dragging a light along with you or having someone there to help hold a light or anything. So yeah, natural light is completely free. Take advantage, get out there. I've shot some of my favorite work has been shot with natural light. So, and a lot of the work on my website, as you noticed, is shot with natural light as well. So, yeah.
And I think in answering this last question, you spoke to this a little bit, but we have another question, a question from Ferry here, wondering, just do you have any general tips for lighting portraits? My first tip for that is to really dial your light in slowly. Really kind of take your time with adding more light to things. It's we're shooting digital now. We've got a lot of leeway, a lot of memory to kind of really kind of dial that in slowly. And I would say also, like, give your light a little bit of shape. I think a lot of people, when they're first starting out, pump a light through an umbrella, it's coming straight on, get it up, get it at 45 degrees, get it a little closer to your subject, wrap it around, see what that looks like, bring it a little further away, see what that looks like, feather it off of your subject and really play with that really soft light and the soft properties of whatever light you're using. Just experiment, I think, but dial it in slowly, I would say, and really kind of learn what your light is adding to the scene. Because sometimes, I've been out and brought a strobe or a light with me and tried to add it to a scene, and it was too much, it overpowered the scene. And I found that using natural light was much more effective. So yeah, add it in slowly, make sure you're seeing what your light is adding to the scene, and don't be afraid to back it out a little bit too. We have some more nice comments from Bruce and from Christy saying they really love the natural light images. So.
Awesome, thanks. So let's jump into a little bit of editing here, and we're gonna jump into Lightroom Classic first. One small, just quick shout out for, I didn't come up with the term racial imposter syndrome. That has been used in a few, I'm gonna bring this down just so I can see, in a few instances. I first heard about it through an NPR podcast called Code Switch, which I highly recommend for anyone who wants to listen. I have that story here. It's racial imposter syndrome. The host had people write in letters describing their experiences as biracial, multiracial, mixed people, and they just got an overwhelming response. Some really incredible stories. One of the hosts is also multiracial, so it's a really awesome deeper dive into this concept. And the first time I kind of heard it, it really sparked something in me and was the thing that really inspired this project. It certainly inspired the name, obviously. So yeah, definitely take a look if you're interested in learning more. So we're going to jump into Lightroom Classic here. So yeah, this is a photograph or a portrait session, I would say, of my friend Jessie here in St. Louis. She's an incredible artist, very, very talented. She volunteered to come in and have her photo taken and have a chat and talk about sort of her experiences as a multiracial person. So this is kind of typically what a session would really look like. And a little bit about the technical on these shots. These are all shot with one light, one sort of overhead light that kind of sits a little bit closer to the subject, is maybe a little bit ahead of them so that the light is really feathering on them, on their face, and really kind of has a very kind of smooth gradient down the image. I shoot these images really, really wide open. And what that means is I shoot at a really wide f-stop. So if we kind of punch into this photo and get into the metadata a little bit, I shot this with a Nikon D810, for those that are wondering. It's a great camera. It shoots, it was Nikon's sort of first really big high megapixel camera. So it's great for studio photos. You're getting a lot of data on each file. It's really nice. So I shot this at f2, as you can see. So really, really wide open. I really wanted to get a really shallow depth of field for these images. I wanted, the viewer to really focus on the subject's face, to really connect with them, connect with their eyes, and really see this person really clearly. So that's sort of the reason for that. I shot this with a 50 millimeter that opens all the way up to 1.4 for those that are also wondering, all my photography nerds in the chat.
There's none of those here.
Oh yeah, none.
No.
So I shot this really wide open, f1.4. This is the 50 millimeter 1.4, also known in a lot of photography circles as the Nifty 50. A really affordable lens, a really great beginner lens for anyone that wants to get into portraiture or start experimenting with apertures that are a little bit wider. This is a really great lens for that.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I shouldn't do too much of this. I made us run over asking you too many questions yesterday. I'll try to contain myself. I wanted to ask you about, I know a lot of photographers often reach for longer focal lengths when they're doing portraits. Is there a reason that you chose 50 rather than some longer, maybe more typical length?
So when I was testing for this, I actually did kind of experiment with, a little bit longer. I think the longest I went with was 85. I liked the 85 millimeter lens. The reason that I chose 50 was that I like that distance. I like that it kept the lens or the camera overall really small. Which made it a little less intimidating for my subjects. I find that sometimes when you're shooting, with that 70 to 200, even sometimes with that 85, your face gets hidden behind this big piece of, metal and plastic. So I wanted something that was a little smaller, a little bit more accessible, and that also kept me a little bit closer to my subjects because we were having a conversation as well. And I wanted to keep that element just really conversational, really friendly. And I didn't want, too much equipment to be blocking my face. So I was really, really thinking about my subjects with this project. I really, really wanted to make that connection. So that's a big reason for it.
That makes a lot of sense and gives me another question I want to ask, and I'm going to save it for later. Go.
Okay. All right. So we're shooting this really wide open, a little bit more technical information. We're using one light. Even with one light, because we're shooting so wide open, even one light lets in a ton of light. Originally this photo kind of looked a lot like this. So to kick this down, to cut down on the amount of light that's hitting our subject, I had to add a couple layers of things. I had to cut down the physical light, with some layers of neutral density filter, some gels that really cut it down. And then even on my camera, I had to add a neutral density filter to the front of my lens to really, really cut down this light, to really allow me to really get into f2. Without either of those elements, I'm letting in too much light. Even at the light's lowest power setting, I'm still letting in too much. So I had to physically block some light out using some neutral density. So that's something that I had to do because I really, really wanted to shoot wide open. And as you can see, when we kind of punch in here to Jessie's face, you can see that, everything is pretty tack sharp around her eyes, and then things start to fall off really quickly right around her cheek in here, and then even into her ears. Her hair is out of focus there. Even her neck kind of falls out of focus. So we're really, really locking in focus on Jessie's face here. So that's really what I was going for all these portraits. I wanted the subjects to almost feel like they were kind of emerging out of the picture a little bit, to really get that idea across of almost being sort of in search of something, really kind of emerging out and finally being seen. So I really wanted to kind of get that concept across. So if anybody has any technical questions, I'm happy to answer those.
There's a question from Ferry asking about, do you always make sure your exposure bar point in your camera is in the middle?
I try to. I think the meter in your camera can do a lot of work for you, and I generally do really trust it. I think you need to sort of know your camera as well, though. Know it inside and out, right? You kind of want to know, especially knowing what your files are going to look like in post. You want to know that, like, okay, if I underexpose this a little, if I'm a little to the right on this meter bar, I know I'm still going to get a really good file here. If I'm shooting outside, I know my skies are going to be in a good place. With something like this, with portraits, I try not to let that drive too much of what I'm doing. I'm shooting manually. I know really what my camera can do, and I know what settings I really want to be at. So these portraits are mostly driven by my f-stop, much more so than my metering or anything like that. I know that I want to be shooting at f2 or f2.2. I know I want to be in that range. So I let that drive everything else. So I let that drive, sort of where my ISO is going to be. I let that drive where my shutter speed may land. So I let that really drive everything here. But I tend to know my camera well enough to know that if I'm shooting a little bit, underexposed or a little bit overexposed, I know that I'm still going to get a pretty good file out of it. So, and it's situational, if you're outside shooting in really bright sunlight, you want to keep some detail in your sky, you want to be a little underexposed. So yeah, it's just a situational thing.
Nice comment here that I totally agree with from Mercurial. I get real Vermeer vibes from this image.
Yeah. There is a little like woman with the pearl earring vibes happening here. And that's intentional. I want that. I want our light to have some shape to it. I want it to be a little painterly. I want it to have have good contrast, and I want it to really shape Jessie's face as well. Her hair helps with that a lot, and the framing helps with that a lot too, and the lighting. So all of those things come together really well. So when I'm looking through images like this, when I finish a session with one of my subjects, we've had this great talk and this great chat. Next, I kind of go through and make my selects. I'm looking for images that really connect with the viewer, that really kind of put us in a really interesting place. And I really like images that, where we have like a little bit of shape happening here. And then we can still connect to our subject here. I think that's really interesting. So I'm gonna 5-star that one. And then we can kind of jump into that one as well. Like I said, I also do an alternate photo for everyone. I set up another light on top of the first one, and I put some gels in those, and we do just an alternate kind of version. And I find the gelled shots really kind of push home that version, that idea of a dichotomy of sort of being split between two or more different worlds that you can't fully that you don't feel fully accepted in. when I first started the project, I thought the gels were going to be a little too on the nose with the concept. But I found that as I kind of tried it, I liked the look. And I thought, I was trying to do it in a more tasteful way so that it wasn't too sort of split down the middle, two gels, two worlds.
No, I'm an idiot. I did not even think of that until you said it just now.
So maybe that's just me being like way too in my head about that. I think when you work these in a really subtle way, this idea can get across without being too on the nose. So I really enjoyed kind of making these alternate shots, and it's just a fun way to kind of get some practice with gels, which I don't shoot with too often, and just provide just like a really interesting addition to this idea of being an imposter. So let's get into our selected image. First thing I'm going to do is check on our sharpness. With a project like this, because I'm shooting so wide open, I am shooting a lot of frames because I have a dark neutral density filter on the front of my lens. I'm missing focus a lot. I also don't use a tripod when I'm shooting these, so I'm moving around a lot. So I shoot a lot just to make sure I have something that's really, really tack sharp in focus. My hope for these images is that, they're seen at some point in a really large medium. So, prints, a book, something that someone can really kind of hold in their hands and see. And I want these to look really sharp. These do, make their way to social media, make their way to Instagram and things like that. But the ultimate goal for me is to have something physical that someone can hold. So let's see, I have another 5-star that I had earlier that maybe is a bit sharper. Let's take a look here. Yeah, that's much sharper. So we're gonna go with this one. So we'll pull this into the develop module, get it framed out here. We're still keeping this really nice shape. Jesse and I had talked this, throughout this entire session. And, we'd pause and take some pictures and keep talking. And she would just kind of fall into these like really kind of natural poses that I really liked. I don't like to pose people too much in these sessions. I like to let people just sort of sit really naturally and comfortably. And I find that as we talk, their gestures and expressions open up a little bit more. And we kind of find our way into the shoot, kind of not at the very beginning, but a little further in, we really kind of start to see that connection and see our subjects open up just a little bit. So what we're going to do here. So I have some, because I've been doing this for a couple of years now, this project. So I do have some presets sort of already ready to go for each situation. I try to kind of make them for each person as well, just because I know that each person has, a slightly different skin tone, slightly different hair texture. All of these different things sort of play into the edit. So for Jesse, we're going to start with sort of our master edit. And this is what I go to for our one light shots without any gels. It's a really nice base starting point that I like to use. It's pretty simple. We're kind of upping our exposure. We're adding a little contrast. We're maybe kind of balancing out these warm skin tones by dropping our color temperature a little bit. We're upping our shadows a bit as much as we can to kind of pull in some of her hair detail back there. I'll show that again. So that's our shadows all the way down. Now we're back to 0. And if we pull it even more, we get even more of sort of that hair back there. This is a pretty dark image. I shot this on a black piece of duvetine or a black piece of velvet, just to really emphasize our subject. So when we pull our shadows up, all we're getting really is her hair back here. Pull that down a little bit, add a little bit of dehaze. If you were here yesterday, you know how much I love the dehaze tool. It's great. Don't want to go too overboard on the dehaze for portraits, only because it kind of affects skin and tone a little bit. Same with clarity. If we go overboard with clarity, we end up in this territory, which is not where we want to be. We want to keep things natural. We want to keep things really organic. So I like to go light on clarity as well. Maybe up our vibrance a little bit as well. So that's kind of where we're going. And, you know, using a preset that I've already created, we get, you know, into this territory a little bit. And it's basically some, you know, minor adjustments in the tone curve, you know, some adjustments in our RGB tone curves where we're really kind of creating a similar shape in each RGB tone curve. And we're even kind of playing with our just sort of our normal tone curve there, just to adjust contrast and really bring some features out. This feels a little too contrasty for me, even at -11. So I'm gonna bring this down just a hair. And we're gonna drop our color temperature just a bit as well, just to even things out, make things a little less warm here. There. And we're going to be working on a couple different portraits today. We're going to do this one of Jesse as sort of our single light example. And then we're going to jump over to another portrait that is using those gels. And we'll get to do a little bit more work here in Lightroom ahead of time for that. But these are really just overall edits. I'm not going to use Lightroom to get into any skin retouching or anything like that. We're going to hop into Photoshop for that here soon. But these are just overall tone, overall exposure. That's where I kind of really like, that's what I like to do in Lightroom, is really get that overall look first and then jump on over to Photoshop to really kind of finish things off over there. Just making just some really small adjustments here, really trying to kind of just even things out. Got some highlights, some kind of bright highlights on her nose, on her forehead. So we're going to kind of bring that down a little bit as well in our highlight tool. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. Got a little extra space here at the top of the frame. So I'm just going to crop in just a hair, just to really kind of bring that in. Do you do something there? Come back a little bit here. And this is all to taste, you know, you just kind of, you're just sort of like kind of figuring out what works for you. We always kind of want to keep our subject looking natural, keeping our skin tones looking good. So yeah, that's feeling pretty good, a nice starting point for us.
Can we see the before after?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go side by side here. Get rid of this. So yeah, we're just go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was just gonna say, is this a good time? Because we've had some great questions come in on the chat.
Please, yeah. We're right about to jump into Photoshop, so this is a great time. Okay,
with apologies in advance for my no doubt poor pronunciation of the name. Musapar asks, what's the kind of difference in mood or feeling that you get in portraits with different focal length lenses, a shorter lens versus a long lens?
Sure. I think, you know, a longer lens, like something like an 85 or a 70-200, and this is all dependent on how you use it, but I think it really kind of makes things a little bit more intimate, right? You're a little tighter to your subject. You can really focus in on the face or certain features. And that's certainly, you know, a way to go. And then I think when you kind of get a little wider, when you go 35, when you go 24-70, you know, I think your environment sort of becomes a character in that portrait as well. So it's important to think about those things. It's important to think about, you know, when you're shooting really wide, you have to think about your environment, or the background is going to be a really big element in that photo, in that portrait. So you have to think about whether that's something you want. If you're going to go really tight, you know, you have to think about, you know, do I need any of that background? Do I need any of that to really influence or give context to this photo? Or is it more powerful if it's just, you know, that tighter frame? So yeah, and I think both can be used really effectively. And I think both can be used to be as moody as you want, or to be as light and airy as you want. I think it really just depends on how you use it. But I've definitely found benefits in both. I really love actually shooting at 35 millimeters. I really love a good 35 millimeter prime. I think that gives a nice sort of middle ground in, you know, where you can, you know, go wide and like really get environmental, or you can bring it in and get not a really tight image, obviously, but tight enough to where that person is certainly the focus of the frame. So that's what I've really been enjoying using 35 lately. I always come back to 50. I think 50 is a great lens. I love the nifty 50. You know, I got it into my kit a long time ago. It's never left. So I like kind of hanging out in those middle ranges. I think that's a nice place to be. So yeah.
Caitlin asked a question that's very related to something I've been wondering about as well. About, you know, there's so much. Your subjects look so comfortable, and there's so many moments of really genuine kind of emotion in these photos, and it makes me wonder, like, how you connect with your subjects. And Caitlin's question's a little more specific. She says, I feel like I'm always really awkward during shoots because I can't shoot and talk at the same time. You know, do you have any suggestions for conversation starters while shooting?
It takes a lot of practice is what I'll say. I still feel really awkward in some portrait situations. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I was shooting a business person here in St. Louis. I really had nothing to talk to this person about. So, you know, you make it about the photos. You ask them how their weekend's going. You say, hey, you look great. These are looking really good. You're doing an awesome job. I think in those situations, it's really important to just stay really encouraging, stay really positive, have some music going if you have access to that. You know, it can be awkward getting your photo taken, especially in those pauses in between while you're clicking. In instances like this, I think you can find things to connect with your subject. So Jessie, for instance, I didn't know her very well before this session. I knew she was an artist. I knew that she we liked the same music. So we had some connections right away. You know, I was asking her a lot of questions about her work before we got into any of the really heavy stuff about, you know, racial imposter syndrome. I asked her about her work, what she's working on, you know, what she's enjoying about her work, what she's not enjoying about her work. What music are you listening to lately? Why do you like that? You know, things like that, I think, can really be easy icebreakers. I think as photographers, it's our job to take really good pictures. Obviously, I think it's also our job to stay really curious as well. So I think if you enter into situations like this, especially with portraiture, as being really curious, as, you know, asking, you know, good questions, and just letting that sort of lead the conversation, I think you'll be surprised sort of where that can go. You know, it doesn't always have to be like super free flowing. It doesn't always have to be like that. But I think if you go in and you ask good questions, and, you know, if you have the ability to learn more about the person you're going to be photographing, certainly do your homework and do that. But if not, just let your curiosity and let those questions sort of come to you. And I think you'll be surprised where you connect with your subject.
One of the Lightroom ambassadors is a great portrait photographer, Andre Laro, and yeah. I remember him saying, if he's doing a portrait shoot and he can't think of anything else to say or to ask the person, he'll ask them, "Where did your name come from? Where'd you get your name?"
Oh, nice!
And yeah. everybody has a story for that.
That's awesome. I know the photographer Platon, the really famous portrait photographer. I remember him in an interview saying his sort of go-to line with all of his subjects, and he used to photograph, you know, really powerful world leaders. It always came back to the Beatles. It was like, what's your favorite Beatles song? Because, you know, everyone has like a Beatles song that they have, and that was his like go-to. You know, whether you're shooting like Barack Obama or, you know, George Bush, whoever, it was always like, so Mr. President, or, you know, Madam whoever, what's your go-to Beatles song? And that just really kind of helped break the ice. So that's cool. That's good advice. I mean, yeah, if you have, you know, find that one thing that you can go to for with your subjects, and yeah, just break the ice that way. It's great.
And people do like to talk about themselves. So
exactly. That's you know, that's the
is that just me?
That's the great equalizer, right? Is like people really love to talk about themselves, what they're working on, that thing they're doing, you know, that thing they just did. Yeah, always go there. Flattery is always great. So yeah.
So before we move away from Lightroom Classic here, a question from Bruce. I think maybe I know the answer to this based on seeing what you were doing a little earlier, but let's get it out there. Do you save edit settings as presets from certain pictures and then use them later on other projects?
Yeah, for sure. I have a whole, user preset area kind of down at the bottom, way down at the bottom here. I really enjoy using presets in general. I've been really into kind of film emulation presets for a long time. Lately, I'm finding I'm using them a little bit less lately, and really going to a kind of a select few from photographers who really know film really, really well. But for things like this, I do save settings for, I save developed settings as presets, especially with a project like this where I want all the photos to really have a similar look, to really kind of have the same moodiness. I think that's really important to do. I want these to kind of look like I shot them all sort of in the same setting, same environment, all those things. So yeah, I think it's really helpful to do that. And, also helpful to, if you're editing a different project or a different photo, always easy to go back and see if those presets will work in that situation. Doesn't always happen, not always the case, but it's nice when it does. You get to save yourself a little work. So yeah.
So we have two more questions that I think need to be answered before you move on.
Go for it.
And the first is from Christine. You spoke to this a little bit already, but maybe you can say a little bit more. For this project, how did you find your subjects? Now you mentioned social media. Were there other ways? Did you know the people who responded? Like what? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So at the beginning, at the beginning of this project, I wasn't really sure sort of what I wanted it to look like, what I wanted the lighting to look like, things like that. And that's true for a lot of personal projects, right? They start as just sort of this idea kind of rolling around in your head, or this thing that you kind of jotted down. So for this, I really wanted to get my lighting locked in early so that I could apply, and make it simple so that it could be something that applied throughout the whole project. So for those early tests, I really was reaching out to people that I knew, friends, family, my wife, anybody that would kind of sit in for me and kind of help me kind of develop the look. So yeah, in the early stages of it, it was, definitely friends, definitely people that I knew that I could reach out to, other photographers who I knew I could trust to kind of give me good feedback on the lighting and on the idea in general. So yeah, it was a lot of sort of really in those early stages, especially to make myself feel comfortable, because I was going to be shooting, strangers here for this project. I really wanted to get, the rhythm of the shoot down. I really wanted to be as prepared as I could be when I really kind of kicked it off. And then, when I felt comfortable enough there, that's when I put a call out on social media. And I said, I'm working on this thing. If anybody's interested, let's connect and let's do this. And that's when I kind of started getting messages from people that I didn't know who were really interested. Yeah.
All right, one more before we let you move on here from Tim. So, Joe, what is your favorite Beatles song?
Wow, this is great. My favorite Beatles song, for the record, is "Hey Jude." I think it's great. I love that like insane ending where I don't know who it is. Maybe Paul is just like screaming essentially. So, yeah, great song. Great question. Ben, do you have a favorite Beatles song? What is it?
I'm not prepared to answer that question.
Oh man,
I don't know. What's the one where like John yells, or Paul or somebody yells, "I got blisters on my fingers" at the end? Do you know that?
Oh yeah. Wait, yeah. I don't know that one. I don't know what it is, but I know the reference.
Anyway, all right, take it away, Joe.
Nice. All right. So we're gonna jump over to Photoshop here shortly. We'll look at one more before and after for anybody that's just joining us. Before we jump over, we just really kind of enhanced this. We brought up, a lot of the detail in Jesse's face. We cropped in just a bit, just to kind of center her a little bit more in the frame. So yeah, we kind of evened out some highlight things. We can get more into that when we jump into Photoshop. And I might bring down our highlights.
Yeah, you're doing a better job of this for those who just joined than I am. Let me say, for those who just joined, I'm here with photographer Joe Martinez, and he is showing us about how to stay creatively engaged through personal projects and is showing us this incredible personal portrait project that he's been working on, Imposter Syndrome. We've just seen you do some overall edits in Lightroom Classic, and are you going to take us over to Photoshop now?
We're jumping over. Yep, we're going to jump over to Photoshop now. Just going to right click this and we're going to edit in. And we'll wait to make the big jump over.
And while we wait for Photoshop to open, let me say, if you join us on behance.net and the live stream on behance.net, you can see the chat pod there and you can submit any questions that you have for Joe there.
All right, welcome to Photoshop. We are going to just get into some more detailed editing for our portrait of Jesse here. So the goal for for myself in any retouching has always been to, especially for this project where it's about, authenticity and sort of capturing this person really genuinely, is to really make sure we're not going too overboard on our retouching. There's a way to do it that's, I think, tasteful, that's natural, that, still keeps someone's texture in a really good way, in a really strong way, but also enhances the image as well. We want this person to look their best. So yeah, that's what we're going to try to do here with Jesse. So we're going to do a couple things here first. So the first thing I always like to do when I bring a portrait like this into Photoshop is I like to just kind of do a first pass where we're going to look for anything that's maybe like a little distracting or a little that kind of draws our eye away from our subject. Because I've shot this with a shallow depth of field, because we shot this on black, we don't have too many distracting elements here for us. So everything that we do is going to be really focused on Jesse's face, where we're going to clean up any blemishes, any sort of darker spots on the skin, things like that. So the first thing we're going to do is just a first pass of sorts. Oops. Just a first pass of sorts. We're going to make a new layer. And I'm going to zoom in Jesse's face here. And this first sort of step here is literally just kind of getting rid of any really obvious blemishes we can see. So I'm going to use the healing brush here. This is the spot healing brush. And we're just going to go through and just kind of make these little corrections here on Jesse's face. And like I said, we're just kind of finding things that are really obvious here. We are going to go through and use a different technique to really clean things up a little bit more. A little closer here. And I mentioned we were shooting wide open. Her eyes are really tack sharp. Her facial features here are really tack sharp, but shooting wide open, I mean, even her forehead kind of goes out just a bit. She's kind of coming forward just slightly. And so even her forehead goes out, and it's a really interesting effect when that happens. It really draws the viewer into her eyes, more so than anything. So we are going to clean up just what we can see up here as well. And again, we're just using our spot healing brush tool. There are a lot of different ways you can kind of go about this first step here. You can use the patch tool, clone stamp if you need it. This is just the way I like to do it. Just kind of going through what we can. Make our brush a little smaller here. There we go. Come down here in the frame and got some more. I'm going to be a little rougher than usual with this. I mentioned it earlier. Normally I am using a Wacom tablet for this kind of editing. Unfortunately today, I am stuck with my mouse because I could not get my Wacom to connect to this computer. I was all over Reddit. I was all over the internet last night trying to get it to work, and to no avail. So here we are with a mouse. We're going to do our best today. Please forgive any really rough selections or anything like that today. We're going to use our patch tool to kind of clean up this little area right here. Actually, no, we're not. Make that a content aware patch tool there. That gives us a little bit more control. That's too much. And you know, these are really kind of subtle changes here. So we make them feel pretty natural. Zoom out. Maybe that was too much. We'll come back and correct that. But this is looking slightly better already. We're going to give everybody kind of a before and after look here. I tend to spend a little bit more time. I know yesterday we kind of, we were working on photos that were meant to be edited a little faster. This is certainly something that's the opposite, meant to be meant to take your time with, meant to sort of look at closely, make sure everything is in focus. Yesterday we were talking about photos that you could be a little looser with, you could kind of give yourself a much more leeway with. And with these, I like to really kind of be really intentional about the editing. I like to think about where these are going to end up in the end. I'd like them, like I said, to be in a book, be like kind of physical prints. So that's definitely something I think about. I'm thinking about the final product for images like this, and I want them to really be able to look their best. So
Ferry says you're doing really good. It doesn't matter that you're using a mouse.
Thanks, Ferry. I need that encouragement. That's great. Talk to me a little later when we start brushing things in. All right, so we've done a decent job here. We can kind of we'll turn off this layer. We can kind of see, here's our before. I'll zoom in just a bit more. Here's our before, and here's our after. So we're making some headway here with just this first pass. And this is very, like I said, it's a first pass. It's sort of just getting rid of anything that's really, really obvious.
Bruce has a really interesting question.
Sure.
Really about do you ever in any way involve your subjects in your editing? Would you ask the subject how far you can go on the editing? And do you have any advice for that?
I think some people let you know. I've photographed a lot of people who are like, "Hey, can you make me look like 10 years younger when you do these or whatever?" And some people, if they have scarring or something on their face or a blemish, some people will let you know and say like, "Hey, I got this thing. Can you help me out with that later?" Yeah, sure. But I think when you don't know, I think it's always really a good step and a good practice to reach out and ask them like, "Hey, I'm doing some retouching on your photos. I noticed just this small irregularity or whatever. Are you comfortable with me removing that, or is that something that you're cool leaving?" I think it's always good to kind of get a little bit of feedback if you can, if it's possible, from your subject. If you can't, I think the name of the game is always subtlety, and paying attention to if this is a feature on someone's face or if it's obviously a blemish. I think kind of knowing which is helpful, and obviously knowing directly from the subject is always the most helpful. But yeah, I think the name of the game is always subtlety. You want the person to still look like the person you photographed. But that's a great question, and I've definitely reached out before and said, "Hey, I'm working on some retouching for this. Just want to get some feedback before I post this or before I submit this. Is this okay? Do you need me to, slide things back a little bit, draw things back? I'm happy to do whatever you need."
Were these folks all volunteering for you? Joe, or did you pay the models?
These are all volunteers. I think they were really interested in the concept. I think a lot of the subjects had never really had an opportunity to talk about their experiences with this, to talk about how, one part of my family, for example, one part of my family doesn't really acknowledge me, for example. Well, this other half of my family has, really embraced me, and that's really shaped my identity and my racial identity. So they're heavy subjects. And I think because they had never really had a place to sort of speak about this before, a lot of people were really excited for the opportunity to come and talk about it and kind of be a part of the overall project. So I was really overwhelmed by the response. I really didn't think it was going to be so many people, but it was a really great response. And I was really happy with, I'm happy with all the subjects that I've been able to photograph. And I'm really excited to do more when it's safe to do so. I did all the portraits you see in my old apartment here in St. Louis. Kind of took over my living room office, set up a mini studio. I was only using one light a lot, so I had the space to really make make use of the tiny space that I had, and make these portraits. My goal is to travel with it and really kind of go around the country and talk to more people and get more stories. I would love the opportunity to get, more, high profile folks in media and music and things like that to get involved. All right, so we've done a pretty good job on our first pass here. Here's our before. Zoom in one more time. And here's our after. So we've cleaned things up quite a bit, and it's feeling pretty good here. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to start working on Jessie's skin, just to sort of even out some of the skin tones, especially kind of on her right cheek, especially kind of on her forehead here. We're seeing this kind of brighter highlight, and even a little bit of discoloration sort of on this side. Some of this is just, this is this person's face. Like that's kind of what it is. Some of it is our lighting too. We've really kind of, because our lighting is, kind of a little over the top, we're really accentuating some things. We're throwing some things into shadow. So we've just got to go in and make some corrections to skin tone and color and some of the texture as well. The technique we're going to use for that today is something called frequency separation. Maybe some people in the chat have heard of it as far as skin editing, specifically editing portraits. A lot of beauty photographers really employ this technique to really even out skin tones and really get rid of any blemishes. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to use it not as sort of an airbrush look, which it can be used for, but we're going to use it to just even out our tones and just bring in Jessie's natural skin texture. So frequency separation, I'm sure someone can explain this way better than I can, but the basics of it are we're going to separate out the texture of this image and then the color of this image so that we can adjust them independently of each other. So we'll be able to adjust the color and the tone of Jessie's skin independent of the texture of the skin. And if we want, we can also adjust the texture independent of the color. So we just separate those things out, and it gives us much, much more control over an image and over our editing. So to start that process, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to merge these two layers that we made. And we're going to do it so that it is, we're merging down what we're seeing. So we're going to hit Command Option Shift E if you're on a Mac. And what we just did is, let me start that one more time. So we're going to make a new layer. And then we're going to hit Command Option Shift E. And what we're going to fill in here in this new layer we made is a merged combination of the two layers underneath it. So now we keep the adjustments that we made here with our first pass, but we get to work on a new layer. It's just the combined image of these two layers. So we're basically starting over with the corrections that we've made, but we're keeping these layers visible anyway. There's a way to merge it all down or to flatten your image so that all of this goes away. We want to keep these here just for editing's sake. So great. So we've done that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy that layer, and we're going to label. So these two layers that we've created are going to be our texture layer and our color layers, right? So we are going to just name these. Color at the bottom, texture on the top, and we'll also layer our first pass layer here too as first pass. So let's make some adjustments to our color layer. The first thing we're going to do is, let's see if I can get into my hidden toolbar up here. There we go. So we're going to apply a Gaussian blur to our color layer. And what we're going to do with our Gaussian blur here is we're going to drag this slider until we lose all the texture in this image, in Jesse's skin. So we're going to slide this over, and we're just going to watch, and we can kind of use our preview here as well. And we just want to slide it over so that we lose texture. Because what we're going to be doing on this layer is all color, all tone. So we don't need any texture on this layer. So we're just going to drag this over. It's good. And for me, right around 9 is when we really kind of lose all the texture. We can even keep it at 8, I think, if we wanted to. But we'll go 9 just for kicks. So we'll say OK, and that'll apply there. And next, we're going to work on our texture layer. This layer gets a little bit more complicated. Again, I feel like I would do a disservice if I really tried to explain it. Maybe there's someone in the chat who's really familiar with frequency separation who can do it. But so for our texture layer, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Image on your toolbar. We're going to go down to Apply Image. And the layer, and then we're going to kind of take away all the color from this layer, right? So we're going to choose color. So this is asking us which layer we want to use. We're going to choose our color layer. And the blending mode of this, because we're going to take away color, we're going to hit our subtract in the blending mode. We're going to keep all of this the same. We're going to keep opacity the same. Our scale is the same, and our offset number is the same. And we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to change the layer mode to linear light. And so that's kind of reset us here. But if we take away, what we don't see is if we take away this color layer, now we have so much, all the texture of this image is now here. Put it back, we've added our color back. If we take away our texture, now we're only dealing in color and tone. So we're going to work mainly on the color layer. We're going to make a copy of that. So we're working just with color. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off our texture layer. So we're just working in color. On the color layer, we're going to use our patch tool here. And what we're going to do with our patch tool here is we're just working on color. We'll be able to select really big sort of patches of skin here. Again, forgive my really bad selections here, working with a mouse. And we'll be able to use our patch tool, select really large layers, parts of the skin, and just find places where we're getting a little bit more of an even skin tone. This is really, really obvious and effective if we use it on a much darker patch, like right under Jesse's eye here. Select that with the patch tool. We'll drag it to an area that's a little lighter, just more the tone we want. Deselect that. And then, sometimes the patch tool leaves these really kind of two defined lines, so we can really get in there and just smooth those out for a better transition. Just keep kind of working there. And we're working with our texture layer off just to give us a little bit more. So we're only working with color, shape, tone here. And you can kind of start getting into other
Evan
areas
says,
here.
this is awesome.
Thanks, Evan. And, you know, we're doing this. If you look at our layers, we're at 100% opacity just everywhere on our layers, right? So when I show you the before and after, it should be somewhat dramatic, but the name of the game for portraits for me, and especially for this project, like I said, is making things feel really organic and really natural. So we're not, just a heads up, spoiler alert, we're not going to keep everything at 100% at the end here. We are gonna, too big. We are going to get in and really kind of dial that stuff down just to make it look a little bit more natural. We don't want our subjects looking too painted here. We got paint really light, but we want to keep our subjects looking nice and natural. And let's see, let's turn this on. And you might even get a kind of a sense of it now. So here's our before, and then here's our after. And if you kind of focus in right under Jesse's eye, you can kind of start to see what we've already been working on. We're already kind of correcting the tone here, and we're affecting the color in a nice way.
And so if you had done that without the frequency separation and you were just operating on her, you would have lost all of the like texture and lines under her eye.
We would have lost all of it. Yeah, we would have lost all the texture. We have like really splotchy kind of areas, because we'd be trying to let Photoshop really do a lot of the hard work, which it's great at doing, but we'd be trying to really lean in on sort of that content aware tool and really let it kind of think about what's happening. And sometimes it does a great job, but I think with skin, it sometimes has a tough job of bringing over that texture in a really accurate way. So when we separate it out, we get to really have that control. And like I said, we're operating just individually. We haven't like adjusted any texture. We're just working with color. We're just working with our patch tool just to kind of even things out a little bit. And we're going to take that a step further as well. But that's the basic concept. So, yeah. Just going to get in here and even this transition out just a little bit. Like I said, sometimes the patch tool makes sort of these really definitive lines when we're trying to sort of copy things over. So we just want to kind of smooth that out just a bit.
Yesterday, for anybody who was here yesterday, you'll recall I was occasionally able to give a really insightful Lightroom Classic tip, because I know all kinds of things about Lightroom Classic. What I know about Photoshop could be communicated in 30 seconds. And so I'm not in a position to do that here. Tim has chimed in saying, it looks like you have the color value at 0 for the patch tool. Try increasing it for better results.
Thank you,
I have
Tim.
no idea if that's good advice or not.
Great advice. Yes. We'll get a little bit smoother transition, I think. Great tip.
Thank you, Tim.
That's awesome. Like I said yesterday, it's so funny when you're kind of set in your ways with things, and you just sort of like not going through the motions, but you're just kind of going through your routine. And it's always really nice to have someone like there to say like, if you did it like this, you're gonna it'll be a little faster. So yeah, I always appreciate that. I think that's great. It was really helpful to have Ben here yesterday when we were jamming through Lightroom Classic, kind of speed things up and help me out. And I appreciate that. So we're just we're here at this sort of hot highlight spot here on Jesse's head. And I'm trying to just sort of even this out. That's not the prettiest job, but you can use this method, this sort of patch method, even on highlighted spots, because we're adjusting color, but we're also adjusting tone as well. So we can adjust some of these sort of brighter highlights. Like I said, this isn't the prettiest selection, the prettiest job here. but we're gonna get through it, gang. Yeah.
Christy also says it's possible to feather the selection, so you don't get as harsh lines.
Maybe that's kind of in the structure as well.
Yeah, I don't know how to feather with the patch tool, but as I said,
I don't know if I do either, actually.
What I know about Photoshop can fit in a matchbook.
So yeah, that's not the prettiest, but that's okay. We actually won't mess with this too much anymore. All right. I think we lost something here. We lost some of our settings here. Oh no. Let's see if we can keep going here. So yeah, I'm doing a really rough job of this. I apologize if it seems like I'm kind of rushing here. I do want to make sure we have time for getting to some other images as well. Zoom in just a bit. Getting in these little areas here. That's great, okay. All right, let's see. So even things up a bit more, kind of, especially on that side of Jesse's face, where there's still some work to be done kind of right in here. I don't want to get rid of too much of the kind of smile lines here. So the other thing we can do, let's group these together. Let's call this frequency. And we can drop our opacity just a bit, just to kind of see where we're at. Just to keep things really natural in there. Cool. All right, I'm gonna do one more quick pass here, just make sure we're getting a little bit better up here.
Can you answer questions while you work?
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to like.
I'm happy to. No, I'm happy to.
I don't want to derail the creative process here.
We've got dead air here, so I'm happy to.
Well, this is a question from me actually. I'm curious about how you're. I don't know exactly what I'm asking. So if you're like, Ben, that question doesn't make any sense, that's fine. But I'm wondering sort of how your professional and personal work kind of interact, like, and maybe influence each other. Do you find that they play off of each other in any way? Do you bring one to the experience of the other and so on? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know, my personal work, I think, is That's a good question. I think what I do professionally is so people-based, and a lot of my personal work is so sort of like the sort of examination of people. So I think it feeds into each other. I think my personal work keeps me really curious and keeps me really kind of inquisitive about the world and about people. And I think I'm able to bring that into my professional work, or at least I try to. I try to really stay curious about the people that I'm photographing and interested in what they're doing. And I think that's the main way it really feeds in. And I think with personal work, I think with sort of developing a vision outside of the professional work, it connects me a little bit more to the professional work, because I think it kind of drives me and keeps me creative. It keeps me kind of moving forward in the professional world. It's difficult to explain. It's a great question. But yeah, I think generally it just keeps me curious. The personal work keeps me curious and really creative. It makes me want to it helps me to follow my instinct a little bit more, kind of what we talked about yesterday. My personal work is really about being present and really about being sort of in the moment. And I think those qualities of it, whether I kind of know it or not, I think they feed into the professional work a lot too. I think in my professional work, I really like to be present. I really like to be in the moment. It's why I ask a lot of questions when I'm photographing someone. It's, why I like to try new things when I'm photographing someone kind of on the fly, because that's what my instinct is sort of driving me to do. So yeah, it's definitely connected. Maybe in more ways than I always notice. But yeah, that's a great question. I think they definitely feed into one another. So yeah. Sorry, I had to pause there to really think about that one. That was a great question.
Hey, this is a great opportunity for me. If anybody's joining us right now, I was not doing a good job with this earlier today, but this is Joe Martinez. He's a fantastic photographer. He's showing us a personal project that he's doing now that is titled Imposter Syndrome. Beautiful portrait work, and showing us some workflow back and forth between Lightroom Classic and Photoshop.
Cool. Okay, I think we're gonna kind of keep it there.
And again, if you have any questions, you can jump on this live stream at behance.net and put your questions into the chat pod. I will relay them to Joe.
So that's a little bit of a before and after there. You can see we're kind of evening things up just a bit. And almost done here. We can jump into sort of the next area. Too much. Just evening these transitions out a little bit. Okay, so yeah, so a little bit of a before and after there. Kind of clean things up, kind of even things out a little bit. And depending on who you're photographing and depending on the situation, I mean, you could be done after the first pass. You could get rid of any blemishes you needed to, and that's it, and be done. If you really were going for, a really, really natural look, or if that's just kind of what you needed. Could also be done after this first sort of pass with frequency separation as well. So yeah, I know we talked yesterday a lot about kind of knowing when you're done with an image. It's really having that sort of end goal in mind again. So yeah, you could really, really be done in after either of those steps. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit with, we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to do just a little bit with our healing tool as well. Turn our texture off here again, just to simplify things. get back into our healing tool, and go healing brush tool. And what we're going to do with this is make this pretty soft. And we're going to just hold down Option to kind of target an area. And we're just going to kind of brush in just some of these areas where our skin tone is a little uneven. So we'll hit target, we'll hit Option, click for the target area, and then we'll really kind of start brushing this in slowly. Turn. And again, we have our texture layer turned off just so we kind of get a better idea of just the color that we're adjusting here.
Now, I can't really walk and chew gum at the same time, but I'm going to test your multitasking by passing on some more questions for you.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So Tim asked, do you ever go back to edit some of your older edits and re-edit them? We talked about that a little bit yesterday in the context of Lightroom Classic, and you mentioned you did. Do you ever find yourself going back into Photoshop as well?
Occasionally, yeah. I think more so with Lightroom Classic, only because it's a little faster to kind of go in and really kind of implement the new Lightroom tools. But occasionally, yeah, I do take, images into Photoshop, especially old portraits that I've, have just been sitting in the archive that are a little older. I definitely like to bring those into Photoshop and, use new tools like frequency separation and, other techniques. Yeah, it's really fun to do that. And kind of like I said yesterday, it's just really great to kind of go back into the archives. And because Adobe has they're just getting better and better, and the program's getting smarter and smarter. It's nice to be able to go back and look at those and to edit them, and to allow Adobe to allow Photoshop or Lightroom to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. When I was first, I think, editing a lot, it was, just kind of going in there and kind of seeing if I could make it work. And now it's so much more intuitive. So it's a really nice change. So yeah, always love to bring in old images and run them through again and see what's changed. It's great. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to come back to Edwin's question in a moment because it's a tough one, and I'm going to derail you with it. So I'm going to skip his just for a moment. I'm going to ask you a simpler, more technical one, and I sure hope the answer is yes. Do you back up your images?
Always, yes. Multiple times.
Your process for that?
Yeah, sure. I back up my images. I'm currently in the process of sort of reconfiguring my backup system. I'm on the search for a good NAS device to really kind of handle multiple backups all at the same time, to save me a little time as far as like moving things from a working hard drive to a backup drive, things like that. But yeah, I do save all of my kind of working, I back up all of my working PSD files, all my layers, back up all of my raw photos. So I back those up to a couple different hard drives, and then also into the cloud as well. So like to have things in 3 places if I can. I've got, the reason I'm looking for a new system is because I have piles of hard drives upstairs, like a lot of us do. Again, shout outs to all the photo nerds in the chat
We're not shooting video. Imagine those poor video guys.
Come on,
right?
those poor folks.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my short answer. Hopefully that the next time we talk, I'll have a much more sophisticated system, and I can get rid of some of those hard drives in my drawer that are driving my wife crazy. So yeah.
I have all of my stuff backed up to the cloud as well, and I love a conversation I overheard at one point where somebody said I couldn't possibly back up all of my photography to the cloud. It's terabytes of data. It would take months. And someone replied, I have all my photos backed up in the cloud, and you're right, it did take months. I solved the problem by starting the process several months ago.
Exactly.
And right, you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to get there. Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely a process. I think it's always sort of like an ongoing struggle, right? Is like, what do I do with all these photos now that I've taken so many? Yeah, it's hard. I remember I was on my honeymoon in 2019 and shooting a lot. We were traveling all over Europe, and you know, I had to come up with sort of, I had, you know, 2 hard drives with me there just to kind of keep things backed up. I was, you know, even during casual trips, I'm thinking about how do I back these photos up? Trips where I'm supposed to be having a lot of fun. Yeah.
All right, I'm coming back to Edwin's question here. It's a broad one, which makes it tough, but it's a good one. Where do you find your inspiration?
Wow. Kind of so many places. I think for projects like these, for things we worked on yesterday, it's just really kind of personal experience. And, you know, especially for this project, which I'm really passionate about, it came from really just lived in experiences. You know, racial imposter syndrome is something that I have struggled with my entire life, something that I still struggle with. You know, you know, I find inspiration from just these really lived in experiences. And yeah, and then, you know, you know, trying to be creative with those experiences can be challenging. You know, these aren't like easy things to really kind of think about and reckon with in some instances, but they're important for me in my work. Outside of that, you know, I think I get just inspiration from the people that I know, my community, the different artists and photographers that I know, people who are doing really great work here in St. Louis and in other places that I've lived, and who are really, you know, this year I'm really trying to focus on really photographing people who are breaking down barriers and really taking up space in places that traditionally they wouldn't be able to. So I'm finding inspiration there lately with people who are unafraid to sort of stand up in places that they traditionally haven't been welcomed in, and really take up that space and really take up that mantle of leadership. So yeah, so it's a really broad question. It's a great question, but yeah, I get it from, you know, lived experiences. I get it from people who, you know, my community who inspires me, my family who inspires me. And yeah, I try to just take that and run with it and be creative with it. It's not always easy, but it's definitely when it works out, it's really, really inspiring, and it's really, really fun. And yeah, great question. Yeah.
I'll give you a short break from the questions, and I'll answer a technical question from Ferry, who asks, what's the difference between half frame and full frame camera? So when people say a full frame camera, what they mean is that the sensor in the camera, the part of the camera that actually is sensitive to light and records the image, that sensor is equal in size to a traditional 35 millimeter film frame. And then the other most common size sensor for interchangeable lens cameras is a crop frame, which is usually about 2/3 the size of a full frame. And crop frames are smaller and cheaper. Other things being equal, a crop frame is going to be noisier and isn't going to allow you to achieve as shallow a depth of field, like the very shallow depth of field that Joe's shown us in his photos here. But you know, there's obviously a lot of other factors and variables that play into those things there. So we have a question from Caitlin, which I'm not at all in a position to answer. So this one's for you, Joe. Caitlin says that has had a really hard time acquiring clients since moving.
Yeah.
And what are your suggestions for getting more clients?
Wow, I've had, you know, this very similar, you know, challenge as well. I moved to St. Louis just 4 years ago. So I was coming from New York. It was a really big transition, just sort of lifestyle wise, obviously. And then, you know, trying to build a professional network was also really challenging. I think my best tips for sort of getting new client work in a new city is really to don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you want to work for. I think LinkedIn, things like that, which, you know, sometimes people kind of, you know, turn their nose up at, or, you know, maybe aren't too familiar with, so they avoid it, is a really powerful tool, actually. And so is Instagram. I mean, when I first moved to St. Louis, one of the first things I did was I started to follow photographers and editors and magazines on Instagram whose work I really liked and who I thought would be a really great fit for me. And then on Instagram, I started, you know, following them as well, or on LinkedIn, I started following them as well. And in some instances, even messaging them and saying like, hey, I'm Joe. I'm new in St. Louis. I'm a photographer. Here's my website. I would love the opportunity to work for you. Please, you know, here's all my contact info. If you ever need a photographer for any assignment, I'm here. So yeah, just simple messages like that, where you're kind of getting in front of people, even digitally, I think is really, really important. So yeah, don't be afraid to do that. And I think also don't be afraid to reach out to local photography, your art community as well. When I first moved here, one of the first things I did was reach out to a company called All Black Creatives, run by Darren and Danielle Jackson, two very good friends of mine. Shout outs to Danielle and Darren. They were creating a community of artists of color here in St. Louis. And they welcomed me with open arms. I said, I'm new here. I don't know anybody. I really love what you guys are doing. And, you know, that weekend I was over at their place, like having lunch. You know, people, you know, in new places are understanding of transplants like myself who've come from different cities, and they want to help. So find those communities, find those sort of ambassadors for your city and for the arts community, and reach out to them. They can, you know, maybe they're not the clients that you want to be finding, but they are the people who live in the city, in your new city, who have connections there, who have roots here, who can really put you in touch with the right people. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out via Instagram, via LinkedIn. I think when we move to new places, sometimes we're feeling a little bit isolated. We're on an island and we're afraid to kind of reach out and connect with people. But that is the best way to A, meet new people and build your own community, and then B, to really get in front of the clients you want to work for. Yeah. Oh, Ben, I think you're muted.
That was an accident. I had to cough a moment ago and muted myself so nobody had to listen to me cough. And then I forgot about it. Thanks for the heads up. I just wanted to give you a heads up. In about 17 minutes, we're going to start our wrap up and our goodbyes. So,
okay, great.
This time has flown by for me.
This has flown by. Did we need to do a spotlight at all as well?
Ooh, we should start that now.
Yeah, we should start that. I'm going to show.
It's like, who's the host here? You're doing my job for me.
I'm going to show everybody a quick before and after as we've been kind of editing and talking. So here's our before. We went in with our first pass to get rid of any blemishes. Then we did sort of we created our frequency layers. We were editing independently on the color layer. And then we kind of went in and we did a little healing brush action. And now here is where we are finally. So pretty big change from our original image to here. Like I said, let's zoom in just really quickly. We've kept all of Jesse's skin texture intact. All we've done is really adjust color and tone. We, using our brush tool, our healing brush, we got to bring down this highlight. We could do a little bit more work on the nose if we had time. And what I really like to do, again, to keep things really kind of natural, this is at 100% opacity on this frequency separation group. We're going to bring this down. If we bring it down all the way, that's where we're at. But if we work this in really slowly, we start to get a really kind of nice, natural look to Jesse's face, which again is definitely the goal here. So that's where we'll finish with Jesse right there. And there are some other adjustments we can make. Normally I would kind of go in and work on her eyes a little bit to brighten those up slightly, add some contrast and some richness to the color of her hair. And, maybe even kind of work a little bit on her collarbone here and her neck to kind of brighten that up. But these are the basics. We've gone from, oops, sorry about that. We've gone from here to here in a pretty short amount of time. though it's flown by. So yeah.
That's great. It's really, really awesome to see this process. All right, I think you have it all queued up here. So let me say a couple words. This is, excuse me. You see why I had to mute and cough earlier. So this is our artist spotlight. This is something that we do on these shows, and this is a member of the creative community on Behance here, and we're just taking a look at their work today here and checking it out. And you too, those of you in the audience here, can get featured on Adobe Live in the artist spotlight if you wish as well. And if I were a good and well-prepared host, I would know what you needed to do in order to do that. But sometimes there's this sort of like, almost like voice of God that speaks in my head and tells me things like 5 minutes left. So maybe that person will let me know. Or maybe somebody, you know what, I bet our moderator can type in the chat and let people know what they need to do if they're interested in being featured in the artist spotlight. Today, we have Devan Eldred. And is Devan in the chat? Is Devan watching? I think he might be.
Oh,
I
wow.
feel like I saw a Devan earlier in the comments. Chime in if you're here, Devan. I hope you are.
Yeah,
we're
Devan.
really excited to take a look at your work here. And I have to confess, I peeked ahead of time at Devan's work.
Nice.
Really great stuff. Can I suggest we jump in where that sunflower is, and then
Absolutely.
after that we'll come back and you drive and we'll go wherever you want.
Yeah, sure. What a cool image.
I thought that this series of images, and there's a whole series of them if you want to scroll down.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Devan says hello. He is here.
Hey, Devan,
Great.
welcome. Great work.
Yeah, welcome. I love these, and I love the details. I love the scent. Oh, yeah, look at that. The butterfly. It's like a yellow petal of the flower, but it's
Wow, this is wonderful. Yeah.
And I love like the sense of place that's here, and the sort of sense of warmth to it. And I actually see, the reason I wanted to start here is I actually see those qualities coming through in a lot of Devan's other work as well.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I like, one of the really challenges I think of exploring a space is really kind of telling the story of that space. Sometimes you get there and you take this really wide shot and you think you've got it. What Devan's done in this example, I think really well, is really explore the space, finding these like really cool details with butterflies and things like that. This is someone who spent time in this space and really, really took the time to explore it. And this is a really, really nice collection of images. This is awesome.
Yeah, it just has such a mood to it,
Yeah,
like, I feel
big
like I'm
mood.
there.
I really want to get into some of Devan's sort of sports things. These are really cool. I love that. It says in his description that he's also a graphic designer. This stuff is really rad. Got JJ Watt here. This is really cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking at this stuff. It's hard enough to be a good photographer and hard enough to be a good graphic designer. And then you do both.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. That's awesome.
I love that Muhammad Ali one.
That one's great. Yeah, that one's really cool. Yeah, just a really cool. I always admire graphic designers who have an eye for that stuff. You photographers are image makers, and sometimes not the best at creating logos and graphics. So I'm always really admire that. Some really cool car imagery here.
Yeah, and car imagery can often be so sterile. And what I love about these are that it's kind of the same touch that Devan had with the sunflower images.
Yep.
It's got that sense of place and warmth, and it's really
good. Yeah, that's really nice. I like how these are really environmental. I think you're right. Like normally cars can be really like a really kind of static, kind of boring shot. This is really interesting. I love sort of your low angle here with these leaves. I love that the reds play really well with these fall colors up here. Yeah, these are great. Nice detail here. Again, getting in tight with details really helps tell the story of a place, of a subject. Those things can be really important. JMU football. He's also a sports photographer as well, maybe.
I wonder,
these are great.
These are fantastic. And I wonder about the sort of the connection between the photographic process and the graphic design process. When I look at these, I'm like, wow, was Devan thinking about the layout when he was taking the picture, because it feels that way, right? It feels very well put together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, these are great. I mean, I don't go to JMU, but I'm excited for football season. This is awesome. Yeah, I really love this. Just really love how the players are highlighted. The layout is really great. The texture that he's used on a lot of these, like just these like really, really cool textures are awesome.
And the color palettes echoing the team colors.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really great. Yeah, these are awesome. Oops, sorry. Yeah. Back in here. Let's see. Let's get back. Let's see what Redtail is. Oh, some logo work. Very cool. Nice.
Yeah, this is a diverse set of skills.
This is a really diverse set of skills. This is great. This guy can kind of do it all here.
Yeah, for sure.
Devan, Swiss Army knife. Very nice. And we've got some portraits here too. Some nice family portraits. These are great. Really good human interaction stuff here. Got the kids, good family, good portrait work here as well.
Oh, I love that in the woods there. Was that by a stream in the woods? That looks really...
Yeah, these are great.
Has an almost sort of fairy tale look to it.
Yeah. I think the colors are working really well too. And, with her red hair and these really deep greens kind of happening back here. I think that's playing really well. I like that a lot. That's cool. And this is such a cool location too. Well done on the on the location scout here. It's really nice. And again, we punch in a little tighter for this really cool portrait. Your light is really doing some interesting things here. I love how it's sort of coming in from above her, kind of highlighting her hair a little bit. You get a little bit of that light on her eyes. Yeah, really nice. Really good framing.
Yeah, I was thinking of that too. I love the out of focus foreground elements that are sort of even partly occluding her, but now she's like sort of like a wood nymph there.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's really cool. Yeah, I love having these, these sort of out of focus foreground elements also really kind of help to place her really well. It's
that
nice.
Stuff always like makes me feel very like aware of myself as a viewer. Like I'm peeking through something. It's a little bit voyeuristic almost,
Right. But no, you're right. It brings you, it like pulls you into the image. I am in this place. I am looking through these leaves in the foreground. Yeah, I like that. This is really beautiful.
Oh yeah, that's lovely.
That's nice. That's really lovely. What a moment you captured here. Love her
Doesn't
expression.
That just feel like they've been together like forever?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you've placed them in just the perfect area too for the colors to really work together. The posture, the pose is really nice. Yeah, this is what a moment you captured here. That's really nice. Little sports happening here. Shout out to the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. All right. Nice. That's a great portrait. Love that. Black and white work. This is cool. This is great. This feels like a really just kind of a campaign that you shot here, Devan. This is nice. Love this portrait. This is wonderful.
My dad's a big baseball fan, and whenever I travel somewhere, I try to get minor league caps for him.
Oh man,
I need the Fisher Cats.
You need that sure. Fisher Cats. Minor league baseball teams have some of the best team names, ever. Very nice. That's cool. Nice. Yeah, we're mixing in a little, getting back into sports photography here. Very cool. Love that black and white. Yeah, really nice.
And a lot of different approaches to processing here as well.
Yeah. It's pretty varied. You can tell Devan's really, it's great that he's sort of experimenting a little bit with a little bit of everything. We've got sort of a retro look here, kind of faded. And then we go back into his sports stuff. And the baseball sports stuff, oops, sorry about that, has a really cool, just a really cool commercial feel to it even. This one in particular is the one that's really standing out for me. It's just a really great kind of commercial feel to it. This could go in like an annual report. This could go in like an ad. You could put text over this and have it, in so many places. I really like the processing here too. It really brings out the texture of his skin. You get the texture of the hat. This is really cool. Yeah.
It's like it's stylized, but it still feels natural.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really cool. Love that. Yeah, nice work, Devan. This is cool. You've definitely got, a good variety of images here. Like Ben said, a good variety of processing here. A good mix of sort of nature work, some stuff that could be a little commercial, a little editorial. If you kind of leaned into that look and some of that. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, definitely some editorial and personality stuff there. That guy on the tractor or whatever.
Yeah. Again, this could be, part of like a larger story even. Like if you kind of went in.
I don't know what that guy's up to, but I want to know.
I want to know. Yeah. I want to know more about this guy's, raccoon skin hat coming out here or whatever. So definitely, I think there are a lot of good, possibilities for just like diving in a little bit deeper into who, some of these people are. Like this, I want to know all about this guy. I want a whole photo spread about who this guy is and this tractor and or this car that he built maybe, and this whole story. So yeah, some really cool beginnings of like.
I love the juxtaposition, by the way. We go from this like really gritty guy to beautiful flowers.
Yeah, why not? It's great. Nice. And then we're back into nature. This is really cool.
That's nice. Kind of an pretty abstract.
That's great.
To that.
And a great candidate for like kind of a black and white processing too. Just something that really kind of, your background's really blurred out. You've really got something kind of standing out really well in the foreground. It's nice. And then you've got
Devan says that's his grandfather.
No way, Devan. Devan. I need way more on this guy. Devin, that's fantastic. You got to keep going with this one, man. I need a whole like book on him. You've
got access. He's your
got access. So, this is very cool. Yeah. When it's safe to do so, go get some more photos of this guy for sure. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and then
that's right. I love the processing on those leaves there.
That's really nice. I really like that.
I like that. I see this in sorry, the Echo device just thought that I said the. Never mind. Like, no, I didn't say your name. What I was going to say was I feel like I see this in a lot of Devan's processing where he creates kind of like a simplified color palette. Where we're really focused on just a couple of colors. And I think that brings real strength to these images.
Yeah, that's great. And it's also just a really good recognition of nice light too. Like you can see like, he noticed this really beautiful kind of dappled light coming here and he worked to capture it. Did a really nice job.
Oh
wow. Hello.
Hello.
Very cool. Awesome.
We have, I think, like 2 minutes. Is there a section here that we haven't had a chance to look at yet?
Let's see. We are down here in some of the advertisement stuff. Not sure if this is more graphic design, maybe that he's worked on. This is pretty impressive stuff. So, this is pretty, high quality commercial stuff. So really great, use of this typeface. This is really fun. The energy of this is really great. I don't know if Devan was
the photographer here as well, but I always look at stuff like this, those splashes. I'm like, how'd they do that?
Yeah.
Are they just chucking stuff in the air and hoping?
I worked in a still life studio for about a year in New York, and it is a lot of that, a lot of this splashing, shooting. All right, we're going to take that piece and put it here and take that piece and put it here. So yeah, this stuff is always really, really impressive. This is awesome. Very cool. Wow. Love this.
Well, this has been great, Devan. Yeah. It's been great to profile you here. Thanks for sharing your stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Devan.
Awesome work. Really appreciate it. And Joe, it feels like it's passed so quickly. It's time.
I know it has.
This has been really fantastic. I've just really, really enjoyed seeing your work and your process and hearing about your inspiration. Do a quick recap here. So yesterday, in case you weren't here with us yesterday, Joe showed us a personal project that he embarked on in order to just kind of get out of a creative slump, and showed us a lot of really detailed and thoughtful techniques for editing in Lightroom Classic. And then today we got to see this really meaningful personal project about imposter syndrome and these beautiful portraits, and see some techniques for editing portrait photography in Photoshop, which is definitely an education for me, for sure. So have really, really enjoyed this. I'm going to glance over at the chat. If there are any last questions for Joe, I'd love to fit them in now before we have to say goodbye. So give me one sec, because I was just looking at Devan's work and I wasn't looking at the chat. So I'm way behind.
I'll answer them quickly. Yeah.
So, okay, this is a great question, actually, and I want to know too, as soon as I read this. Tim asks, what's next for you, Joe?
Wow. So I'm still doing some more work with the incoming St. Louis MLS team. For any soccer fans, doing some work with St. Louis City SC, which starts their season in a couple years. So a lot of ramp up for that, which is really exciting. I'm a big soccer fan. I've got my little Liverpool hat right in here somewhere. So yeah, really exciting to keep working on that, and just meeting more new clients here in St. Louis as things sort of start to, my work, like everyone's, took a pretty big dip last year. So things are kind of starting to finally kind of come out a little bit more, and people are looking to hire photographers a little bit more. So hoping to continue to stay busy. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, before we say goodbye, let me give a quick pitch for the rest of the day. We are streaming live all day, and we have great programs coming up after this. So coming up immediately next, hang on, I'm going to get it right now. It's Andrew Hawk Rattle.
That's it. Nailed it.
Yeah, I got it. I think I got it. Close enough, anyway. I was told earlier it's a German name, but I'm not even going to try that correct German pronunciation. And so that'll be Daily Creative Challenge in Illustrator. After that, we have logo design with John Olson. And then we have the Daily Creative Challenge in Adobe XD with Andrea Epi. Draw Along with Kyle T. Webster follows that. And then the final live stream for today will be Doodle Therapy with Alice Lee and Shirley Wu. And I don't know what that is, but I want to know, just based on the name.
Sounds awesome. I feel like I could use
I need
that.
Both of those things, right? Yeah. Yeah. So some great programming coming up later today. I want to thank everybody who was able to join us today. Thank you for watching. Thanks for all the excellent questions and all the great accolades that came in for Joe. Well deserved. And then, of course, our biggest thank you to Joe. Really appreciate it. This is a great opportunity for us to see your work.
Thank you. This was a wonderful opportunity for myself. This is my first time streaming. I hope to be back to show some more work later down the line. But again, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you to Adobe for having me. This has been awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.